Fish, you gotta work on your attitude. Twobold was really happy to be here.
Yeah, what's the deal?
MagictheNoah is a very interesting channel. Originally hosting Magic the Gathering content, the channel's main focus nowadays are these rigged Google Slides game shows made to torture YouTubers. One of the main means of trolling being directly from Noah himself, rigging the game shows against them specifically. You've got trick question trivia, wrong trivia, boards the players can't see, and points being taken away for pointing out minor contradictions or asking real questions.
So goated, bro. Oh my god.
Yeah, worst item in the game, by the way, right?
But who does he hate the most? Well, taking inspiration from that game theory video where MatPat scientifically determines who Mark's most smashable Pokemon is, I wanted to scientifically determine who Noah hates the most, and enter the psyche of Noah's noggin to piece together what you should do or avoid should you ever wind up in one of his YouTuber saw traps. Oh, and just wanted to say, this video took weeks upon weeks of research because I had to go through over 55 hour-long each videos and chart down every time it happened. So for the sake of filling you in, I should probably explain how this whole thing is gonna work. In my document itself, I assigned the various forms of torment with a 1 to 5 point scale, dubbed Disparity Points. These are not counting when a player does something to another player, but only actions coming from Noah or his games themselves. I have a lot of counted up categories to have as much data to work with, including what minigame or wheel it was, if a specific NPC triggered it to happen, and if the action was forced or not, a pretty important indicator we'll be looking at deeper when we get to the players. As for the points, they're pretty straightforward. 1 point is for when Noah causes some noteworthy upset among the players or prompts some kind of verbal negative reaction, not for every time someone is upset, but more for things like screaming or crying, where there's a clear base guttural response. Also used for minor infractions in general. 2 points is for RNG, poorly designed wheels, or particularly bad luck. The idea here is that Noah doesn't really account for how likely some of the rolls are, so if there's like a 25% chance rolling twice and they keep hitting it, that's bad game design, and it's on Noah to rectify it, or at the very least give some kind of leeway when things get especially rancid, because he should have accounted for how likely something would to happen over and over. 3 points is the most common one, troll answers or BS rulings that aren't targeted towards anyone in particular. These are usually things Noah has already decided before any of the players begun, so he's not setting anyone at direct disadvantage. 5 points is the maximum as for any ruling that's explicitly to put a particular player at a disadvantage. If he takes away your points, that's a 5. If he doesn't let you do something but then another player is then allowed to later on, that's a 5 too. I won't be mentioning a bunch of these specific moments, but it's good to know the process, especially if on the off chance you decide to go look at the actual sheet with all of this, which I'll be linking below in the case anyone's interested in my exact thought processes. And before we begin, just one last disclaimer, not here to cast judgment or stir the pot when it comes to these YouTubers. From the videos themselves, I highly doubt that any of the hatred shown goes past doing it for the funny, so obviously no hate to Noah, and I don't think any of the people mentioned here hate him either. I doubt there's any real targeting or favoritism where Noah has to fill his Torture Vernius quota, as I'm sure the results I'm about to show are something even Noah himself had no idea of. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's start crunching and munching on the over 500 rows of data by starting with videos. I thought it'd be a fitting starting place given that they're the reason for the suffering in question. The last video Noah uploaded was drawing game, but the players can't draw. Uploaded just 2 days ago as of this script, though we have a lot of information to consider here. For the sake of simplicity, I decided to take every video and categorize them by genre based upon the most common game formats Noah uses. Out of these categories, we have trivia, which is self-explanatory, board game, which is for any game that has a player move along spaces like this, blind, where the player cannot see the game world and has to make their own map if they want to strategize, word puzzle, a more modern game type where the players play word game akin to Hangman to guess the word, and lastly, draw, for the games in which the player can draw their own assets. And cards, I forgot to mention it because I'm a phony. When lumping the categories together, we have board game as the highest amount of points, 702, nearly double in the lead of the second highest suffering score for RPG. Though this should be expected given just how many games are of the board game category, 23 out of the 58 in this dataset. As I said, the second place, RPG, is nearly half of that, at 359. The genre with the lowest disparity points wound up being cards. Not too surprising, as it was one of the only 2 categories to include a video that had absolutely 0 Noah card disparity, that being the video card game but the cards are randomly generated, in which no rules were bent to hurt anyone. It was just overall a fun, pain-free time. I don't think many people are here for the genres though. What about singular videos? In third place, we surprisingly have I made a game but the players can't see each other. I say surprising because on average, blind videos don't have a lot of disparity moments due to the main troll being wrapped up in the concept itself, or most pain being caused by other players. In fact, whenever a video of this category showed up, I would always dread it because I'd have to slog through an hour or more long video, knowing there'd likely only be 1 or 2 actual moments to chart. However, this video being the third highest score is a strong subversion of this, mostly in part of most of the disparity points marked being a max 5. A good chunk of this being due to outright lying, such as when they tell Ultrive they can't go up when they can, to inconsistent rulings such as Circle Tunes being rewarded for complimenting Noah, but Point Crow being punished for it, and even one moment where Noah makes a brand new punishing wheel and makes Ultrive step in it. In second place, we have D&D but the players hate each other, another Point Crow Circle Tunes Ultrive video in which another massive amount of targeted bad things happen, majority of which targets Circle Tunes, as this is the video when she becomes Noah's favorite pincushion when it comes to bad things for the sake of funny. Most constant and noteworthy of which being how his maximum health is cut in half again and again, and any logical attempts at fixing this only punish him more until he quite literally only has 1/128th of a heart, and every breath is suffering. The video with the #1 highest amount of suffering was Noah's 4th ever game show where I didn't tell the players how to win. A classic Fish Twobold Lewis video that racked up lots of points for things like ignoring player choice, with the invention and first ever appearance of the Shadow Realm as well as the Super Shadow Realm, which would later give Twobold his patented Stockholm Syndrome for the space. Several cases of players auto-losing, the Goodwill giving bad consequences, and the majority of items bought at the shop doing absolutely nothing.
Woo! Goodwill! Let's go!
It's not a good wheel.
It's Goodwill! No! It's not a Goodwill at all! It's the opposite of a good wheel! This is a wheel of lies!
As the wheels dictated, you'll now lose 1 gold.
God damn it!
As for least painful videos, I've already talked about how card game but cards are randomly generated has absolutely no suffering, but there's actually another video with 0 disparity. That being Traitor Game but there's no traitor, surprisingly. Though this is more so due to the players doing a fine enough job on their own to cause suffering to themselves. Being one of those videos where they double or nothing everything they see until they have nothing but an empty pit in their heart and soul, and a gambling addiction. Outside of that though, for the videos with the least amount of suffering, Noah's first and third videos are tied for third. I made a game show to torture YouTubers, and Horrible Jeopardy, both of whom only have 4 points among them. A game show to torture YouTubers having just a troll answer and ignoring a possible solution to a question, and Horrible Jeopardy having 2 coin flip based questions that are purely RNG to win. In second, we have I Made a Game But Losing Is Good, whose only point is a 3-pointer where Noah gives Small Ant a triangle space despite him asking for a square. Not a big deal, but still definitely a troll answer. And lastly and first, we have I Made a Game But the Players Are Blind, which only has 1 singular point for a minor lie Noah said about there being text under his sign the whole time when there wasn't. Either way though, the worst video category looks to be Game Show, RPG, and Trivia, and the best to get in on is Cards, Drawing, and Blind. What about the games themselves? In my research, I also made sure to note if the suffering was triggered by a specific minigame, wheel, or something else, as well as NPCs separately. I was able to determine that within games, third place is the bad wheel, which is to be expected at 53 points. More surprising though is a second place tie between the D20 wheel and word puzzles, both of which racking up 87 points. Last place, we have a more than double lead from third, which is the Jeopardy Trivia category with 123 total disparity points worth of wrong answers, troll answers, and instant losses. Although not making it to the top 3, there is another extremely important game to bring up, that being Pokemon battles, which despite only coming up in 2 of Noah's videos, racked up a whopping 40 disparity points with a 100% force rate, which makes now a pretty good time to explain force. When I was going through all these videos, something I would mark is whether or not the moment was forced, yes or no. Forced in this context means it was something that Noah made happen, or more specifically, if it was unreasonable for the players to have any real choice in what happened. So if someone went to a space and it happened to have a bad outcome, that's not forced, but if Noah decides he didn't like what you just said and takes away your points himself, or a rule changes changes and there's nothing you can do, that's forced because even if you did the most logical thing in that moment, you can't really veto or argue against whatever just happened to you. In the case of these Pokemon battles though, every time a Pokemon has caused disparity, it was due to Noah directly. For example, when Sophist dies to a Hydro Blast from a Squirtle despite it only rolling a 9, Sophist gets an item slot permanently taken away from him for the rest of the game. Nick gets captured by a Zapdos even though earlier it was established that players could not be caught, leaving Nick in a very awkward and uncomfortable situation. And when Brent catches Gyarados despite every other time instantly getting your caught Pokemon, Zapdos steals it from him and uses it himself. And is also, despite being a Pokemon themselves, able to have multiple Pokemon, whereas these trainers get to only have one and are not informed of this prior. Rip Gengar, you will be missed. These Pokemon are foaming at the mouth feral, and so whenever you see one, it is within your best interest to run away before Noah decides to experiment with cooking mechanics. If you want to know what minigames or spaces might be safe, however, you might be surprised to hear that the safest spaces of the ones that have any disparity points at all are tied between Missile Outpost and the Arena of Math, both of whom only have 1 point, as the Missile Outpost only gets a point because Lewis got verbally upset at 1 point, and the Arena of Math never really had a wrong or trollish answer. It was just math, which might honestly be worse depending on the person. Here's something interesting. Let's talk about which NPCs or Noah-created characters caused the most harm to the players. The Goblin is an obvious choice as they appear to be easily the most common character when it comes to a negative force that the players must battle or fight against, appearing in about 1/3 of Noah's videos, which is why it's no surprise that the Goblin isn't number 1. I was pretty surprised by this, because with the amount of times I kept putting Goblin in that box, I was confident that they were going to win by a landslide. But as it turns out, they're only second, with a 48.5 point total, 28 of which are forced. In third place, we have Demons, which isn't too surprising, but this is a combined total, combining Demons, Demon Lords, Shadow Demons, and other such things. Technically, one type of Demon has less points than Vernius's Ladder, in total tallying up to 43 points, with the highest forced points at 38. So who is number 1? It's Pokemon from before. Again, surprising given they've only really popped up in like 2 or 3 videos if you don't count Vaporeon, which you shouldn't given they have no disparity to their name. Tallying up all Pokemon together, you get 52 points, 48 of them being forced. Slightly bumped up now that we're not only considering Pokemon battles specifically, but Pokemon doing anything at all in his videos. Flipping the script again, if we were to try and find the least suffering NPCs in Noah's videos, we have in third place Leonard the Pig, a drawing created by Yi but still controlled by Noah, so it still counts. In second, we have a 4-way tie between an Angel, Adventurer, Dark Wizard, and Sophist's Pocket Dudes that leave him immediately. And in first place, we have Alexander from The Weirdest Game of D&D, for Noah killing them off when Thoughtful tries to bring their friend with them. And so now is the moment you've probably been waiting for. Or skip 2, which... not cool, man. Who are the top 3 people Noah hates the most? This is your last chance to guess and say I knew it, by the way, because the results aren't what you'd expect right away, as I myself was so confident on who it was going to be, only to be completely off. Ready? In third place, we have Ultrive at 110 points, 83% of which are forced, primarily thanks to points and coins being taken away for joking about things like Noah's handwriting, but also because of being a main punching bag in the third most painful video, I Made a Game but players can't see each other from earlier. Though outside of this video, we also have I Made a Game with stupid word puzzles, which had a lot of moments for Ultrive in which on several occasions they get the answer correct, but Noah decides anyways to give it to somebody else with the exact same answer. There's also a point in which Ultrive struggles to come up with an insult that stands for emotional damage, and they are punished despite not being the target of the wheel. Next up, and far more expected, is Fish in second place, 141 points at a nice and chill 55% forced rate, meaning a little under half of the bad things that happened to them weren't exactly from Noah, and were instead due to the game itself or bad luck. Fish is pretty expected thanks to number 1 being in so many of Noah's videos alongside Twobold, and number 2 because of their group, they're the punching bag. You see this in most of the videos they show up in, mainly thanks to their much softer, more hesitant nature compared to Lewis's cocky antagonistic side, or Twobold's bold throw yourself at the problem persona. So if Fish isn't number 1, then who is it? Well, it has to go to none other than Circle Tune, surprisingly, with a titanic 234. Nearly 100 points more than Fish, with a whopping 83% just like Ultrive. This is especially odd as in their tree trio of All-Tribe, Point Crow, and Circle Tunes. Prior to this, All-Tribe was the punching bag of the group, remaining the case even when Point Crow was swapped out for Slimesicle in their trio. However, one particular video seemed to change this, at least in the mind of Noah, or if not intentionally. His higher soul has some extreme beef with him ever since the video D&D but the players hate each other, where Noah made a quote-unquote impossible game of D&D where they have to defeat a plague serpent as level 1 adventurers with next to nothing on them. In this video, something seemed to shift in Noah's mind after around the 8-minute mark, as allow me to read off everything Circle Tunes suffered in this video alone. Circle Tunes dies instantly even though the spider rolled a nat 2. Despite All-Tribe rolling a 2, meaning he should be the one who gets the consequences, Circle Tunes is hit by All-Tribe's cannon and instantly dies instead. By the way, this was a separate 2, just to clarify. When Circle Tunes offers that because they defeated the boss spider that they should each be given a heart, Point Crow and All-Tribe get one, but not Circle Tunes. Instead, he loses a max heart, having canonically the same amount of hearts as a frog. Despite Circle rolling well, often implying more control, the attack fails and hits Point Crow, killing him instantly, and Circle is then punished for Noah's judgment, as he only has a maximum of half a heart from here on out. Circle Tunes is knocked down to a fourth of max heart permanently. Circle Tunes begs the Potion Keeper for a potion of health because someone has made him so weak in HP they can hardly stand. When they're given this, they roll instant death and dies instantly. Circle Tunes now only has 1/8 of a heart permanently. A light sneeze could kill them. When Circle Tunes begs again, they are left with 1/16 of max health. When Circle Tunes complains that he wasn't given the stolen heart, and how All-Tribe now has 5, Noah puts Circle down to 1/32 of a heart for complaining. Noah doesn't even have a reason for this one, 1/64th. And lastly, when Point Crow dies, Circle Tunes loses another half of their max health, putting them down to 1/128th. I don't know what to say about this. So scientifically, I can say that out of everyone that has suffered in Noah's game shows, that Circle Tunes is 100% the one that has suffered the most. But for fun, let's see who was targeted the most via the highest amount of forced points only. Circle and All-Tribe's 83% is still technically in the lead, but looking past that, the next highest percentage is Point Crow. Unsurprising given how much pain Noah seemed to put their select trio in. Below this though, we have Two Bold at a surprisingly low 63%. The last person to have triple digits as Lewis SMLE is just a half a point behind at 99.5 due to having the only half point of disparity. If you want to look at who has the highest force ratio regardless of total points, however, that has to go to Bumbler, who's the only person with a whopping 100%. That means every inch of suffering Bumbler has experienced was handcrafted from Noah's sweaty palms. This is because Bumbler only appeared in one video and only had 2 moments of suffering, each for 5 points. One for getting punished for failing to insult someone who rolled emotional damage, causing them to get the points removed, and the other in which Noah overrides Bumbler's guess and makes him spin the bad wheel. If we want to look at the least targeted, it's not too surprising that in third place is Wubby and second is Dug, as both haven't appeared in enough videos to experience much wrath because both are pretty willing to make themselves suffer for the sake of a punchline. This is especially easy to see in any Dug-based video, which would naturally rank far lower than any other videos, simply because Dug's natural do-it-for-the-funny energy entertains Noah enough for them to not feel the need to force anything. In fact, it was for this reason that when I asked people, many thought Dug would have the lowest score. But the number 1 spot is very interesting because they have, at the very least as of right now, never experienced any suffering from Noah. And before you ask, no, it's not Noah himself, that answer's too cheap. But if you want to guess it right, here's your opportunity. The person who has not suffered once is the Spiffing Brit at 0 total disparity points. And if you've watched this guy's content, I'm sure you kind of know why. As the Spiffing Brit's main shtick is that he will take advantage of the rules the game has to break and take advantage of it. Whereas other contestants will often be forced to ask questions that Noah doesn't like or confront him about inconsistencies, Spiff will pretty casually take advantage of the rules in a way Noah can't really contest. In a way, Spiff's strategy is just to assert whatever you're going to do before Noah has any real chance of combating it. Not in the way of like, I have 2 trillion points now because I say so, but more in the way of, because you said this earlier, I'm gonna do this, where Noah doesn't really have any room to counter it without also countering himself. Unlike others who will ask permission from Noah before they do it, giving him the chance to correct it before it can happen. There's also the fact that when something bad would happen to them, mainly by other players or luck that didn't warrant any disparity, the Spiffing Brit would pretty clearly not react. A gray rocking strategy that makes it pretty difficult to make any real comedy from the side suffering of him in particular, because he's naturally more laid back and uncaring about it compared to Rarin or Fur, who act far louder and voice their discontent in a more content-usable way. This is also good, as this puts up a doing his own thing vibe that makes the other contestants focus on each other rather than Spiff until he's built up enough to become a problem. You see this in nearly every video he shows up in with Fur and Rarin. Rarin is the punching bag of their group, and Fur just likes to focus on fighting things, so just let them fight each other, let Noah focus on their funnies and trolling them, and build up your own little empire to the point that no one can stop you. It's that easy. Looking at the lowest force percent, there are plenty of people who have 0%. Maldhound, Andy, Joel, and Spiff, again, all have a clean goose egg. Not counting them, however, we have Tamago at 26% and Volpixie at 29%, due to not showing up in many games themselves, and the games that they did show up in being primarily PvP focused, where it was players fighting and trolling other players. Probably because they were too intimidated by the fact that Tamago 100% the Impossible Quiz Book, and a few of Noah's trick questions may have been borrowed from it. In third, though, we have Captain Kid at 30%, despite the many videos they have been in. Only 12 of their 40 being forced, and overall having an incredibly low number given just how long Captain Kid has been a contestant for, and how many videos they have been a part of. And so with all that being said, we have Circle Tunes at the most disparity, and Spiffing Brit at the least. And we know a little bit of why, but I decided to go a step further. Taking all of the traits of the most commonly seen in the best and worst moments, I've decided to create my own fake contestants to show the theoretical maximum of who would be the most and least targeted. Pretty much see this as a contingency plan of what you should and should not do if you were ever made to go to one of these game shows. From the data, it seems like the best YouTuber contestant for the best chance at minimal suffering would first of all be a reaction channel, maybe with some skits or comedy on the side. As when checking what kind of YouTubers each of these different contestants were, these three categories seem to get far less points than others. On the worst side, the worst contestant would be a gaming channel, particularly an FPS focused one. In personality, the best would need to have a laid back persona with enough confidence to say what they're going to do next without asking for permission, but without coming off as demanding either. They'd need to be polite and observant enough to reuse what Noah himself puts down, as well as willing to be the butt of the joke themselves. After all, if you make yourself the butt of the joke, Noah won't make you the punchline. The worst, however, seems to be a particularly submissive yet competitive individual that assumes logic. They must be a perfectionist who might attempt to correct mistakes and remind Noah of past rules, despite how this may anger and upset other players. A surprising finding during this is that, although likely a psychological thing, Noah seems to generally target players with a higher pitched voice more than lower ones. So the best players should have a deeper than average voice, and the worst should have a higher one. And as we mentioned earlier, the best would likely need to be invited specifically to a card or drawing based game, and the worst would need to be invited to a board game or RPG. Now, there isn't a specific person that 100% fits the best contestant, but as I was going through the list of theoretical worst contestants, you might have noticed I used Vernius' profile picture, because through sheer statistical anomaly, Vernius should be the theoretical cap for the worst traits you could have in a MagictheNoah contestant, only missing one or two of the traits. Vernius, although not an FPS gamer, is a gaming YouTube channel part of the Party Crashers, mainly playing Mario Party and Kirby. Within their group, they are traditionally the submissive one of them, but still has a competitive nature when it comes to Mario Party. It's just that they aren't going to let you win just because you're acting sad, but in that same vein, if there's a grandma voice stuck in a cave asking for help, Vernius has a good head on his shoulders and is naturally going to want to help out, the exact type of headspace that Noah likes to take advantage of. Although I wouldn't call Vernius an extreme perfectionist, it's almost always them who corrects mistakes and then gets punished for them, and despite already knowing they'll probably get points taken away for doing it, they still do. There's straight up a running joke within the Party Crashers themselves of Vernius scolding other players for not using their items. And on top of that, Nick has on several occasions made fun of Vernius for reminding Noah to give them punishments or debuffs, making Vernius enemy number one, but also punching bag number one for comedy. Vernius has a naturally higher pitched male voice, which as we discussed earlier, is targeted more on average. Though luckily they aren't a very loud individual like all Triver Circle Tunes, and of course they're almost always invited with the other Party Crashers to do board games or other RPGs specifically. So it's pretty safe to say that Vernius ticks off almost all of our boxes. But how come despite all of that, they aren't number one? How come despite all of that, they're not even close? Despite being in several videos, Vernius only has 63 disparity points, 39 of which are forced, giving us a 62% forced ratio. This doesn't even make them the highest scoring Party Crasher, as that goes to Sophist at 78 points and 51 forced. But in order to discover why this is, you need to to remember Noah's psyche. Noah trolls YouTubers for the funny, that's his job. And part of the funny is that if someone challenges him, he punishes them to hell and back because power trips are also funny. And lucky for Vernius, there's someone right there who's more than willing to, at least unintentionally, take the heat off Vern. Two of them, actually. Sophist, like I mentioned before, and Nick. Sophist actually shares a lot of the traits that would have otherwise saved him, mainly in that he uses the rules of the game itself, and that he makes himself the butt of the joke a lot of times. But where this would usually defend him, it actually hurts him when you consider the main persona he is amongst the quartet is that he is the problem child of the group. His whole role is to be antagonistic and get under everyone's skin by doing a bit of trolling. As such, Sophist takes off a lot of the pressure put on Vern because he's redirecting it to himself by purposefully doing bad ideas, by arguing with the game master so he retaliates, by doing nothing but thunderspells so Vern can scream Sophist no while he dropkicks a child. That's his thing. On the other side of this is of course Nick, whose persona on his side is being a toxic little gremlin who's overcompetitive and cocky. A perfect tool for Noah to quote-unquote troll by setting him up to fail or putting him at a disadvantage. And within the party crashers themselves, it's pretty well known that Nick often targets Vernius, as within Noah's games, this is true too. So on top of Nick's very persona making him a target for Noah, on top of Sophist, attach that soldier guarding child from Knives meme here, even if Noah did want to make Vernius suffer, all he'd need to do is trap him in a room with Nick, which Vern did to himself apparently.
Nick, what are you doing?
What are you planning to do?
Are you busy threatening Vern IRL?
Or more likely, Noah would just need to bump up Nick's power and let Vernius accidentally make an enemy out of himself by reminding him of something bad. Which he has done, if you remember that time when Nick was given an ability that was literally just kill Vernius instantly. So pretty much Sophist and Nick kind of unknowingly take blows for Vernius by being funnier to punish, and having more reasons to, on top of Vernius getting most of their suffering from the other players, something which my list doesn't account for. So yeah, the Vern Nation survives! For now. Hopefully Noah doesn't see this and get some creative ideas. And so with all of that strategizing in mind, I will finally take my turn and move 2 squares.
You move 1 space, you lose your next turn.
Fuck!